Hi, this is Colby Mead from the Colby Cast, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
And you lot are not going to say a word. Not one word, you understand? You're going to follow my lead. If I get even a hint that any of you are thinking otherwise...
You've seen the show, and like us, you have questions.
Ooh, that was a good one, but try this one on for size.
No question should be left off your list.
Whoa, I got a crazy theory, but hear me out.
But you better have some spares.
Oh, that was one of mine. All right, let's do this instead.
With me, as always, is my friend and Card Squadron winger.
This is Greg Cass, a.k.a. Ion Cannon.
We've recorded at home and across the U.S.
Last summer, we were from the Boston Common. This week, we're in Chicago.
This is day 3 of celebration.
The show has had many names, but the purpose is the same. Let's share some time at the table.
Ding ding, it's time for breakfast.
Welcome to the Breakfast Pack, a Rebel Base Card micro podcast series. A returning Rebel Base Card podcast series that asks more questions than it answers. Today on Breakfast Pack number 96, Our Flag Means Breakfast. We're talking about the Skeleton Crew's penultimate, I just wanted to use that word, Greg, installment that debuted on Disney Plus on Tuesday, January 7th. With me again is my co-host and Card Squadron winger, Gregory Cass from IonCannon.com, back from, it's award season, so, you even dressed the part, you've got the sweater on, you are ready to dive straight into the awards on the long take review. How has it been? And I saw the card, like the sheet that you guys prepare for the globes. I'm like, it's hardcore. You guys are like right into it.
Yeah, we did ballots for it. Jen did that for the first time for the Oscars last year and decided to do one up for the Golden Globes. And we had a friend of the podcast, Anthony from Force Ghost Connections, compete with us, which was fun, and an old grad school friend of mine. And so it was fun to compete. I did not do that well. I only got 7 of the 15, I believe, but a lot of the surprises were good surprises. And there, I think there was a lot of worry that this would be a bad movie year, and it's a fantastic movie year. There's so many good movies that came out, so it's really fun to get into award season now. I think there was one category where 3 Star Wars actors lost at one point.
Boo.
So, I think it was Ewan's category. I'll look up the details of it, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's great to be so busy with podcasts right now as we kind of, as you said, reach the end of the Skeleton Crew journey, which is crazy that we're there already, but exciting.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So are there like 15 major categories? Do they do like the Oscars where it's like 45 of them are done ahead of time and then they only do the primetime ones, or are there basically just 15? I never really thought about that before.
We only did the film categories. So the Golden Globes is one of the shows that does both, but we went for just the film categories. I think it was 15. Now you're making me second guess how many were on the sheet.
More Jen is just cringing.
Yeah, but it was a tough night for a lot of like predictors because a lot of the categories did not go where people thought they would, which is a good thing in general, but turns everything on its head.
I hear you. All right. So if you all are out there are joining us for the first time, this is an insert series podcast in the regular feed where Greg and I are going to trade questions to each other that we have not talked about before about the latest episode of Skeleton Crew. And since we're talking about a brand new Star Wars series, I'm going to remind anyone, if you haven't seen this latest episode yet, there's going to be spoilers, and we would invite you to please come back and listen after you've watched. Now, for this contest of questions, there are no points, bonuses, or lightning rounds. There are Pringles cans, but we'll get to that later. But we do have a return of the Greg's List, which is a selection of podcasts and other assorted media that we've ingested, read, whatever, that may have answered any of our questions and then some. It's also one of my favorite parts of the show as it highlights just some of the amazing work being done out there in the community. We hope you check out some or all and maybe find a new content creator you like and want to support. I am kind of curious now. You did have an extra little bit of commute. Did you put that to good use, or did you just sort of tune into regular Boston metro area afternoon radio?
Well, I can't say that I put it towards Skeleton Crew use, but I did catch up on some back issues of podcast Stardust, and they are, of course, covering Skeleton Crew. And I did not listen to those episodes today, but I listened to some of the end of their Phantom Menace coverage, where they did the 12 segments of Phantom Menace over the course of the year. I contributed, I think, back in April or May, and then they were wrapping it up and getting to the peace at the end of the film. So it was a great time, and it was a good reminder to me that Dennis and Jay put together a heck of a show. And having now seen behind the scenes, I never knew they do like 4 in a sitting. They just like crank them out and keep up with all the shows, all the books, all the comics, all the TV shows. Like it goes on and on and on. They're doing everything. And so I want to just give my time over tonight to just shouting out them and the great show they produce. And I recently had to turn down a chance to be on because I had another commitment, and it broke my heart. So I at least owe them a shout out here.
No, and I was kind of doing the same. And I know, like, I got to be on one of the Phantom Menace shows last year, but I also know that they do a bunch together, and they've been having a lot of fun with Skeleton Crew as well. So many folks have. It's been nice because you can pretty much tune into just about any of the podcasts out there. Although I was sitting there, like, kind of like putting down some notes on that, and when I abbreviated podcast Stardust, I think I accidentally put down PTSD, and I'm like, that's not how that should look. I'm gonna have to come up with a new one because I'm like, that's not exactly how I thought about that. But it was kind of funny because like last week, and this is not just a slight, this is on anybody. I'm like, I was surprised at the number of folks who didn't see the lightsaber snag.
True. I mean, that was me too, so I can't make fun.
Yeah, and not that, but also what was interesting is also there was some other sentiment about how come he didn't use the lightsaber. And I was going to say, for those folks, this was the episode for you. If you were kind of waiting for the lightsaber to kind of come out, this was your one. But also, for me it was like Thank the Maker, Making Tracks, CWK. I had a chance to listen to, and podcast artist. Although it was funny, a lot of times when in my podcast playlist, once we get done with our show and I start like kind of stacking shows, I try to do them but in order of like episode length. So I can knock out, like, if there's like some that somehow some of these people are doing these in like 25, 30 minutes. I'm like, wow. But some folks will go, if you go Cantina Cast, but I think RFR's like after show went 2.5 hours. And I'm like, that's a lot. I don't know if we have a 2.5 hour episode in us. But then again, next week, depending upon the length, you never know. But anyway, but that's how it's nice when sometimes you can kind of stack them to go like, I could spend the afternoon listening to this 1, 2, or 3 hour podcast, or I could knock out a bunch and then you kind of see. But it's kind of interesting to see everybody kind of compare notes as far as like, and I think going into this one, Greg, you're going to see there's so much that could go in so many different ways. I'll be really curious if some let the speculation flag fly, which I'm not going to spoilers, but I'm feeling that tonight. I don't know about you, I'm feeling it. But anyway, all right. I am kind of curious where you're going to lead us off tonight with your first question. I'm so curious.
Well, just since we don't have a guest to ask, I will say heat check at the beginning of this. This was a lot of fun. I had a great time with this episode. I was just telling Greg off mic. We were actually in the middle of a recording of Long Take Review, and due to some of the terrible windstorms out west, one of our co-hosts lost power. And so we were kind of waiting to see if he would appear. And then Jen, PT, and I were like, wait. It's Skeleton Crew night, and we got this little glint in our eyes as we locked across the Zoom screen, and we're like, we need to get off this and go watch Skeleton Crew right now. So it was great, and then I stayed up later than I should have, considering how much I had to work the next morning. But I made sure I got the whole episode in because I couldn't stop once they stopped. I will say an increasing complaint about Disney Plus, and I don't know if this applies to you. I am on the ad tier. And they need to be careful where they're placing these ads because it is terrible right now. There was one right in between the shots of the vault door opening and then seeing what was inside. it wasn't deliberate like you would have gotten on an old network show that was actually edited with commercials. They just dropped them in. So it's a little frustrating. Disney Plus, Bob Iger, I know you're listening. Please take care of this.
I tell you, I am close to that because, we've been shuffling around. Like, I know that on Apple TV Plus, Severance is starting soon. And I'm like, ooh, do I really need Paramount Plus the next couple of months? Maybe I should just stop that and put in Apple. But I think I did switch. I got rid of ESPN Plus, and so now I think the Disney Plus bundle, which I was like one of the early birds, I actually jumped back and got I think Hulu Plus and Disney Plus, but it's without commercials. But I'm like, I don't know how long that's gonna last, and so yeah. But also notice that some of the podcasts I listen to, the bigger ones that have commercials, a lot of times those commercials come in when they go, and here's something else, and then cut to commercial, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. The AI can sense a pause, but not necessarily what's on either side of that pause. So,
oh no.
yeah.
But yeah, no, last week's one, I'm like, as soon as I finished it, I'm like, I got to watch it right away. This one I had a more of a gap, but boy, yeah, you want to talk about heat check. There was some heat in this one, and it was quite interesting.
All right, but you asked me for a question, and I dodged.
I did.
So here we go. I want to ask first. I thought we got some tantalizing clues here. How much do the parents know about at Atten? And this is going to an early part of the episode with the hologram message. They start dropping some hints that they might know a lot more about what's going on than I think we suspected, right? They tell the kids not to say where they're from. They tell the kids that they weren't supposed to learn about this until after they graduated. What the heck's going on, Greg?
I did put some thought into that, and I do think that they know what the great work is for. They know that they are there, either they're calculating how much currency they should produce based on models. Now, it's interesting. They haven't gotten any kind of feedback for a very long time. So they might be going off some historical where, the trend is your friend, where they're going on. They know that, they obviously can't go past the barrier. And that it's interesting that when the supervisor announced that the Republic emissary was arriving and talking about hey, other than non-essential personnel stop what they're doing, which I thought was fascinating. But I do think that they know what they're doing, and they know that I think probably one of the biggest things that I think it's probably better that you're an adult to hear is that you can't leave. It's one of those things where it's like, this is the importance of your mission, and this is why we're here. This is why there's that barrier outside was enormous. That planet was far away from the barrier. But I do think that that's what they know. They obviously don't know that they're still going when everybody else stopped, and some of the other planets. But I do think that they know what they're doing it for. It is interesting when you saw underneath the, as the ship drops and it goes down into the vault. I start thinking about, Fern's story, like her grandpa tells her that if you don't do well in school, you get to go down to the mines. And I'm like, where's the school at? Because I'm kind of curious. It did look like there was some stuff being done. But that's about as far as it. I don't think they have any idea what's going on outside the barrier that is current. Put it that way.
Yeah, well, and that was the piece I was going to pick up on that you hadn't said out loud yet, which is they do say go find a Republic emissary. So they believe the Republic still stands.
Yeah, good luck with that.
a little out of date on that one. And, I mean, it's so crazy that there's this giant vault under seemingly the center of town. I mean, we still don't have but they went deep, right? So maybe the center of the planet. And is there one of those back at Akron? All those people warring, are they over some giant pit like this that also has treasure or once had treasure in it? I'm very curious, but I wouldn't be earning my pay for this podcast if I didn't come up with an obscure pop culture reference. And I thought a lot about The Village. Did you see The Village, the old M. Night Shyamalan movie?
I don't think I ever saw it. I remember seeing the trailers for it.
All right, so spoiler for like a 20-year-old movie, 25-year-old movie, probably at this point. But the M. Night Shyamalan twist on that is that The Village ends up being a construction where people decided they hated the modern world and they went and hid them and their families away, acting like it was like Pilgrim times and safe. And so it made me really wonder, could it be that these parents made the choice at some point, right? That yes, they're secluded inside the toxic waste, but could it be that they could have left or they knew more about what's going on? I still agree with you that there's not a clear sense that they know the supervisor or that the supervisor's still in charge. I think that was a recording from the sounds of things. So it feels to me like it might not be that they're prisoners there, though. It might be that they know a little bit more, or that the parents maybe have been told what's happening outside and decided to keep the barrier up, right? If you heard planets were getting blown away, you might want to keep your toxic storm shield up, is something I'm thinking. So not sure, but there's my tinfoil hat.
Well, what's interesting is that over the weekend, I Apple TV Plus had a free preview, and I fired up the first couple episodes of Silo.
Very popular right now.
Right, and also very similar in that it's a society that, is underground and nobody quite knows because there's a rebellion that destroyed a history and they're only living off 140 years of history. And you start to go, at some point, did somebody know? I would have to think if there was a supervisor that was humanoid, like proven humanoid at this point, and had lost communication. I think some of those earlier generations might have thought it odd that no Republic emissary, although they kind of act like it's a Walgreens, like, hey, if you find a Republic emissary, they'll let you back in. I'm like, go down to CVS and pick up a thing of milk. By the way, we need some milk. That reminds me later. Oh, that's what that string on the finger's for. But yeah. But I do think that over time, I think the biggest kernel drop was the fact when Jod was saying, like, At-Aten's been hidden for hundreds of years. And then you start going, how many hundreds does he think he's talking about? Like, you got to figure several hundred. Otherwise, he would have said a couple hundred, maybe 300. And then you start to think of, like, when did Captain Renard come into play? ... So more questions than answers on that. But anyway.
Hey, since you just invoked the name, a Canon connection / Easter egg that I've been wanting to make sure we got in for, I think, 3 weeks now, and I never did. Captain Renard, did you see where that name comes from?
Oh, yes. That's was it Richard Donner?
Richard Donner, the director of Goonies, your favorite film that you've yet to see. But, a great major figure, and they wanted to give him a shout out. So essentially reverse it, and you get Renard. Great. I love little Easter eggs like that. So that's a good one, too. But I'm just stalling and giving you time to prepare your first question, sir.
All right. I think we probably need to... I think we need to kind of chew on this one for a while, so let's just bring it to the table. Is Jod pretty much beyond redemption?
Take
your time. Let's ease into it.
He doesn't mind me sharing this. Director Bennick texted that when that scene happens in the cockpit, his two sons, one college age, one high school age, turned to him and said, "That's how you act when you're fixing the Wi-Fi," which I find hilarious as a joke. So I hope you don't mind me sharing that, Director Bennick, because it is also how I act, right? When you're trying to fix that gadget, whatever it is, and your kids just don't stop talking. Part of it. So. I'm not entirely sold still. And I think that was a very dark scene where he screams at them. But I also think that is very much in the heat of the moment. And while he wants to steal all these credits, I don't think he actually intends to harm the kids. Look, if he wanted the kids dead, there would be lots of dead kids right now, right? He had his opportunity. Yes, they were valuable. Yes, they're the way in. Maybe he's bad, but not that cold-blooded. I mean, the gorgeous shot of gorgeous Jude Law looking down at that gold and it reflecting up on his face and all those emotions. Like, he is certainly driven by greed, but I'm not convinced he's a bad guy still. And maybe that's naive of me, but I have some questions about where this is going. What do you think? You're in the other side.
I think you have to kind of start from the point that he learned of the location on, at the spa, as it were, where his tone immediately changed. And it's amazing how he can kind of turn on a dime from, we had that excellent monologue, the last one where he's saving his own skin. And then as soon as it's in his favor again, he becomes incredibly harsh, throwing people out of airlocks. And in this case, it was interesting because a lot of folks weren't quite prepared for him putting a knife to Fern's neck. This one where he's just like, there's nobody around to hear him, and he's at his wit's end, and he's just going, look. And then he takes that one step further with, I'm glad I saw that video of your parents, so I know who to carve up and things like that. But I think there was some frustration there, which I get it, right? Because if you haven't been around, it's like how all your friends who don't have kids,
Yes.
Wonder how you have this, the patience of Job, and but then you're like, this is a Wednesday, but I could see how that phrased him. But I don't think he wants to kill them. But I do think that everybody up at this point says don't trust him. There's probably a good reason for it. I think as soon as he gets it in his favor, which is probably why half the galaxy's looking for him, because he's gotten what he's wanted. He's double crossed. I start to kind of think, and started thinking this last week, are we going towards a Kylo Ren where he does manage to, we find he's not all bad. But at this point, where do you put him in the galaxy after this, right? It was sort of like Ben Solo. It's like, where's Ben Solo going to be? He's not going to work at, like a record store, the indie record store. That's not our guy. At some point he may have to save himself. And that's where I kind of thought that, if the supervisor turns out to be the real bad guy, and he kind of has to, he kind of finally decides to save the kids over, himself or something like that, where he kind of sacrifices himself. I could say all right, but I could also see someone like Jude Law going I don't mind being a villain. I can totally pull this off, because people love those kind of roles where they can really just kind of soak up the whole desk. So,
I mean, that's what he did in Captain Marvel, after all, was that kind of heel turn. Well, so I don't want to count this as a steal, so I'm going to throw immediately back at you with one of my questions, which is, given that, how did you read the very last moment of the episode? So he gets his gold, he sees the vault, he understands it's just one of many. And then when he walks back out to the parents and kids reuniting and lights up the lightsaber, is this him threatening them? Is this him starting to try to make himself out to be a Jedi and plot his escape? What's he up to in those last couple of seconds?
I could see where, he is taking a cue from the ship where it's like, all right, line up, because we have to kind of go to the supervisor. It seems like that's where we're going to head. But I do think that, he probably either thinks all right, are they just going to go, they just immediately reunited? Are they going to say, hey, this guy's bad. And maybe he's just kind of taking the initiative, as it were. He has the initiative of 6 over their 4 or something like that. If we want the D&D reference. Hi, Tom. But I think that's more what it is, because I think there's a lot that has to happen. I mean, he has to somehow get up to the supervisor, have them turn off the barrier, or allow, the frigates to come in, because 1,130 vaults, that's a lot. They won't be able to get it all, but they could be able to possibly haul off quite a bit. And with the Onyx Cinder sort of in these magnetic clamps, I mean, more for just the landing craft and they're going underneath the ground. But yeah, there's a lot of things that have to happen for him to get out of there, which is interesting. That if you think about the shanty about Captain Redhead's has the goal the treasure of Ad-Atten or whatever. That you've almost got too much. There's almost like I have a logistics problem. So I've got to really figure this out. But I do think that it's to kind of move things along, which would go in line with how the show goes. The show doesn't tarry too long before it has to kind of move on. And so it's like, all right, we've got 30 to 40 minutes of a finale. We gotta get out of here. And we're deep underground. We got to be in the supervisor's tower in 5 minutes.
Well, so I felt like the editing of that last moment made it seem like he was going to do something violent, which to me means it's got to be a fake out and he's about to do something kind. And maybe that's why I'm still hopeful that there's something there. So that's me, again, to steal the D&D term, metagaming, right? It's like, okay, if they're trying to make me think he's doing something villainous, then he must be doing something righteous. And I'm not entirely sure what his end game is. Because you're right. He wants to bring in the pirates and the frigate and now knows he needs to load up a lot of treasure. But, like, the amounts we're talking about, he can't be thinking, I got to take it all. And you imagine he would be thinking, I want to control this planet. But it's not like he has enough pirates to get all the way through all those droids and all the security. So I'm kind of curious in all those ways you just said. I did want to note his kind of point blank murder of Captain Brutus was pretty graphic for Star Wars. I mean, they didn't show it. Very much reminded me of the beginning of Rogue One when Cassian, says, hey, relax, don't worry, and then kills that guy, like, boom. And I think that the Andor team has made a lot out of, we'll show you how he became the guy who could do that in that moment and then yet somehow still get the Death Star plans. And so I'm curious, since they're showing that level of brutality, is it really just that he's so far gone, or is there something else? I mean, that book ends with him walking up to the families with the lightsaber. I mean, is he going to, like Anakin, kill some younglings, or is he just going to use that to talk his way into getting maybe all of them to start loading credits onto the ship?
To be fair, and I like your point, I mean, he did off the Wolfman, but he did not kill the Space Mouse. He kicked it out of the way, because I think he would have lost some audience there if he went. And I do agree. If you like your Andor dark, get ready for season 2, because I think it's going to get a whole heck of a lot dark. The other thing I was trying to think of, like when I saw Jod at the vault, knowing that the supervisor's tower is all there, then I thought, this is any time you're trying to get out of IKEA. There's just all these bins of all this stuff, and you're just trying to get out. You're just trying to get back to your car with the thing you hope fits in the car. And I'm like, yeah, that's the space version of trying to leave an IKEA. On this, and I'll throw this back at you because we're talking about Jod. Hello. Does he make it out of the series?
I'm kind of starting to lean towards no. Well, is he going to get Nemek'd is what came to mind, right? It seems like a kind of Twilight Zone ending would be appropriate for this character, especially if he's unredeemable. So is it that he gets locked inside one of the vaults, so he gets all his treasure forever but doesn't get out? Could it be that the treasure crushes him? I don't think he'd literally get Nemek'd. But could it be that he loads up the ship and in trying to escape, that changes the transponder and he gets blown up? I think in true Star Wars morality fashion, his greed has to be his undoing. Yeah. So I also think it's much easier to sign somebody like Jude Law when you tell him it's a one and done. And so maybe that could be. But we know that Skeleton Crew is in the mix for whatever the Filoni movie's going to be. And wouldn't it be great to have Jude Law, a movie star, in your Star Wars movie? I'm not sure. Where's your head on that? What are you thinking?
In thinking of like my last question about redemption, I started to think like, yeah, I do think that you could either say he there's a sacrifice at hand, and maybe for the folks who are looking, for those in the Jod redemption camp, time's running short on this, but on the one hand, you're right. I think financially speaking, you really would like to have Jude Law out there somewhere, and so you could see a ship full of credits. He's got everything he's wanted. He can't get a hold of his ship, but he can make it back, and somehow KB, they had to take down the barrier or something, or maybe she's able to tell the barrier that that's not a ship, that's not a friendly ship, and it does this sort of like it crackles, and maybe you see kind of an explosion or something, but in traditional Star Wars fashion, you don't quite see the body. You kind of get Darth Mauled, as it were. So I could see something like that where he could pop up. But then again, we were all kind of wondering if Hondo Anaka would show up. I don't think that's happening either. But I would say the good money is that he was probably it's probably it for him. Just how he's going to be remembered as. But yeah, that really, you want it to tie in. But I don't think so. I'm not feeling good about it, man. I love me some Jude Law in this. I'd like to see Jod go on, but I'm not feeling good about it.
So I'll jump back in. I want to talk about the parents again. I did love the opening sequence in the forest and how one after the other gets stunned. But I got to know, what's up with Neil's dad? Why is Neil's dad not helping in the forest and then is in the hologram? So it's an unanswerable question, but please give me your fanfic about why is Neil's dad kind of on the outside of this?
Hello, he's at home taking care of the kids. Have you seen how many kids they've had? Have you not done this for the wife? Have you been like, all right, it's your turn. You got to stay home. And I tell you, as a dad, it wouldn't kill me like later on when this is all resolved going, oh, great. I'm glad it all worked out that I didn't have to go out there and do something. I mean, Neil's dad's a stud, right? He's big. I wouldn't mind having that muscle on the skeleton crew, but I think as a dad, you'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to take care of the kids, make sure they're fed, and I hope it all works out. If I don't, my wife had a dental appointment this morning. I'm like, if I don't hear from her, it's all fine. If I hear like, hey, the insurance card didn't work or the HSA card didn't work, I'm just like, silence is gold. So I'm right there. Like we know Wim's dad's got the St. Pauli girl, sign in the garage. So he's one of us. He's out there just going, I just got to get through the day.
I like that. I only would give a slightly serious stint on it. We know he is an analyst, which seems like the desirable position. So is it that he's part of the machinery that's keeping this vault full, right? Is he a little more tied? And we'll see what's revealed. But I thought, well, and maybe it's something as simple as the mask didn't look as good as they wanted. So they hit him just in the hologram one time so that they got their money's worth, but they didn't have to, fix it.
Well, and what you're hoping, it's not another Constable Zuvio, thing where it's like he's in all the pre-press, he's got his own poster, but he's even got to figure out he doesn't show up in the cast. All right. Let's get this one on the record. Supervisor. Is it a humanoid? Is it a character we have not yet met? Is it a droid? Is it rented? In your mind, in your crazy tinfoil theory, ding ding, let's go. What's the supervisor?
Oh my gosh, I didn't say my catchphrase at the top of the episode. Daz is going to be so disappointed. I'm sorry, Daz. I just now realized I didn't say it.
The Rebel Base Card would like to apologize personally to Daz Davies for not saying the catchphrase.
Gosh, what is the supervisor? Here's where it comes down. I think the most obvious answer is AI. And that has to do with where we are in our society right now. And it has to do with kind of what we're seeing here is that there's some AI that is aware of what's going on out in the galaxy and decided it's better just to keep this all locked up and safe and keep them all fooled. When AI goes bad in a movie, it's because it decides human beings are the real threat. But I think this is an AI that's gone bad, like usually to be like too overprotective and not letting them have their choices anymore and locking them into this. But That's much more Star Trek than Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't usually do that kind of rip from the headlines technology thing. So if there is a supervisor who's a human, I can't imagine, well, or humanoid. It would have to be some species that's ancient, right? It would have to be a Yoda or a Maz Kanata, it feels like, to be that old. But that makes me think it's got to just be a droid or an artificial intelligence. I don't think it can be human. And with Wicked out there burning up the box office, it just feels so easy to have it be somebody false and somebody fake. And, we've made the comparison before. We have these 4 little adventurers that can somewhat relate to the characters that need to find their brains and their courage and their heart and their way home. And so it feels like it's a little too perfect just to have this not be the Wizard of Oz. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I guess somewhere between, the Jack Black type, oh, hey, it's a cameo from someone that we know that, we didn't know until this point. It is someone, maybe they know what's going on. Maybe they're just rumbling, stumbling, fumbling. But yeah, I have to also kind of lean like, I think the supervisor, I think it's one of those Star Trek type villains where it's like, it's just a computer. It's been on autopilot. Nothing's really there. Because at some point, and maybe I'll just tack on this because it's a good point to kind of talk about, like, the resolution that comes. Who wins the day? Is it the kids? Is it the New Republic? Or is it Jod? Sorry, this kind of snags it. It kind of transitions into that, but I am kind of curious because I think it does go with what the supervisor is.
I think the kids have won because they got their way home, and that's the ending they needed. But I think it's going to be a hollow victory because I think in the final episode, Aden will be revealed to the galaxy, and the long consequences of that are going to be devastating, right? And I mean, I think that is a very common plot structure for growing up stories, right? Maturing stories, because sometimes in this life you do get exactly what you want and you realize you never should have wanted it, right? And so I feel like that's the kind of place we might end up here, where the kids have gotten back, they're reconciled with their parents, they've already learned that the parents aren't mad at them. I think we're going to have them all united, like you speculated on a previous episode. And I think, in order to beat Jod, they might have to reveal the planet, and they'll have no idea how much trouble they're going to be in.
Yeah, it's interesting that Wim's quote, once we get back, everything will be back to the way it was. And you're like, oh, no, I'm going to start calling you Wim the Destroyer. Because I think with that one push of a button, I think you've pretty much destroyed the way of life or the way it was. And you're right. I was kind of wondering, is this going to be a resolution that, for a kids type crew, you would want them to have a hand in it. Like I said, maybe KB does something where she figures out once they've kind of destroyed the computer or something like that, or maybe the supervisor's a computer and but she's able to figure out, a workaround or something, and maybe they all kind of, I started thinking of these kids sort of, speaking of Wicked, like the Wizard of Oz. I'm like, okay, you have Fern and you have Neil and KB. Like, all right, they were starting to like, oh, they don't kind of add, they kind of line up a little bit. But I do.
They absolutely do, right? Because I think Fern lacks a heart. Right, she's got the bravado and the swagger, but she didn't have that empathy for KB, right? KB, she's smart, so I guess she would have to be courage. She didn't have the courage to stand up to Fern. She didn't have the courage to go out adventuring. So that would give us Neil needed courage, and we showed him learning courage on the war planet. And Wim just wanted to find his way home. Right? He's our Dorothy.
Yeah, or he's the Scarecrow, and he really needs a brain sometimes because you're like, all right, kid, don't But
all right, I doubled up a little. I don't know. I think I messed it up, but yeah, I think you can do it. I think you can do that reading. who needs a brain? Yeah, I guess it might be Wim, with that plan he put in here. I doubled up on courage. Sorry.
No, I'm going to put it out to the audience. What if you saw a Wizard of Oz connection between the kids and getting home in the Yellow Brick Road? Who do you think is what? And then maybe we can reveal the answers next week, because we've already called out half a dozen people already. But yeah, I do think that it will be fascinating to see where we end up, because we understand the ramifications of what's happening, but how will it unfold and how much time will they allow it? Is it going to be one of those where it's like the last 2 minutes before the 7 minutes of credits? You're like, oh, let's flash forward. Because to be honest, this was filmed a little while ago, so the kids are already probably a little old, and at any rate. But I'm getting ahead of myself on there. But it's interesting. I think the kids play a part, but maybe they still need a little bit of assistance.
All right. I just got one dumb one that's not really one, and then a good one left. So
awesome.
My dumb one that I will fake you out with on the way to my good one. We have 1,139 of these other volts. That's not a Star Wars number. You're supposed to say 1138. And so then it really means that we have 1140. That's not a Star Wars number. Why is it so close and not a Star Wars number? It's crazy to me. But I don't think that's answerable. So I'm going to go with this.
All right.
What could this fortune do to the galaxy? This is an insane amount of money. This is a Raiders of the Lost Ark. Pause for my sound clip of the Indiana Jones theme song. And you just play it in your head if it's not there, audience.
I need a soundboard like Jen.
But this is an unimaginable amount of money. What could this do to the galaxy at a moment when we know from Mandalorian the New Republic is not flush with cash? They're only affording counselor droids that are half a droid attached to a chair, right? And that the convert, the great episode of The Mandalorian, was also this same director, Lee Isaac Chung, who directed Twisters this summer, which stars Wim's dad. So it was technically a Twisters reunion on this episode. So this is a very unstable galaxy with a lot of weirdos and bad people out there. What do you think this amount of cash could do if it is unleashed upon it?
3 words, because I had to think about it. Star Killer Base. I think this funds the First Order very easy. And I was thinking about this. I'm not gonna touch the Final Order, because that's a whole other line of credit that I'm sure Palps had. But I would say that it's interesting because did the New Republic go back to the Old Republic credits? And in which case, yeah, you could see them swooping in if the barrier's down and going, okay, no. We don't need galactic inflation here when we're trying to keep order. But on the same time, I could totally see the first, the inklings of the First Order going, well, these Star Destroyers aren't going to build themselves. And as we saw in The Last Jedi, it's like, hey, there's plenty of folks out there more than willing to make whatever you want to do. But yeah, carving out a good chunk of Ilum to get Starkiller Base in there, I'm sure would run anybody's Discover card up quite a bit, and you better have some like Black American Express card credit for that. So I could see this would be a very nice way to fund bad things. But yeah, I don't think anybody finding 1,139, and I went back and rewound that because I'm going, do I have that number right? Because I was like, okay, it's going to be 1138, and then like, so maybe the 1139 was a nod going, see, we put one extra.
We're different.
we're different, all that Arabish that's all over the place that people have to read, that somebody puts out on the internet, 2 weeks later. But yeah, I think nefarious gains, but yeah, it's interesting that, for a group of pirates, this would be like more money than they could ever spend, but it would pretty much be self-contained. Once this gets out, boy howdy, how are you going to keep people from? I mean, you're going to have the whole Republic. You're going to build the rebel base there, because otherwise they're not going to stop coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think the galactic inflation is right. This is how we get these high prices at Batu, right? That's where they come from in Doc Ondar's
Have you been to Doc Ondar's lately?
I I also went to the first order, and I actually was pondering the final order, if I'm honest. I mean, there's a lot of material that goes into Starkiller Base and then that fleet of Star Destroyers. And, if there are Rise of Skywalker skeptics in the audience, they tend to be people who say, like, where were all these people and how long were they under the ice in Star Destroyers and why? And those questions make you get angry very quickly, right? It would seem like there were generations of Sith troopers who lived and died aboard Star Destroyers just to eventually rise up out of the ice and slowly go towards the atmosphere and then crash down and die. But I don't know if that's satisfying.
Some probably were drawing pensions by the time that they were discovered and they're getting ready. Like, really? I'm 2 days from retirement, and he's going to go through and do all this.
Than that. But it does seem to me that we now, pieces on the game board is a certain Grand Admiral coming back from another galaxy with some crazy set of boxes. I guess that's all we know for sure. And we have a huge amount of cash. And we have, I mean, all of this is taking place 4 years after the Battle of Jakku. And at least in current established canon, which is mainly books, which get rewritten all the time, that the Empire makes its last stand on Jakku, and then the pieces that become the First Order get out of there. But we saw Moff Gideon's secret council, and there was a Hux on that council, and there was Paleon, which is Thrawn's buddy. So I think we're starting very early getting these hints of how this is all going to start folding together. And I don't have the answers, but I can tell that's where I should be asking questions.
Oh, yeah. You could totally get all that new Stormtrooper armor, or you get that Stormtrooper armor mint on card. I mean, all that, like, that's enough to buy, like all the stuff that you needed that is in near mint or on card quality. But yeah, It does kind of, it's convenient, and I'll be curious if they use it. But then again, these guys knew that, hey, this is a mint. This is the last one. There's a lot of loot here. Where's that money going to go? It would be nice. At the end of the day, I don't care who uses it, whether, Thrawn buys himself. I mean, the Chimera, have you seen it? It needs a little help. It's a fixer-upper, and the rest of the fleet. But it would make... I think it would up the game, because if you think about the Mando movie, let's say Thrawn's in it and the remnants of the fleet, it's much more interesting if the remnants get a nice little surge and you go, okay, now it's just, whatever's left. Hey, we got a couple of, TIE fighters that are still left. Now it's like, oh, wow, we've now had time to make some new ones. And this is a big threat, and the Rebel fleet's not ready for it. The New Republic fleet's not ready for it. I gotta stop calling it Rebellion. But I'd love it. We want those tie-ins. We want the connections now. We've had our fun. This is a great series, but now we're like, all right, how does it play out with the rest of the galaxy?
I mean, I think they're chasing the Marvel model, and these are our Infinity Stones, right? They're not part of a set that's so easily identifiable, but I think eventually, in hindsight, we'll see that these are the key elements that were put together to set up whatever Filoni's got planned.
I don't know how this one's going to go down. Maybe I don't know if I can back up this question, which I thought was a great one at the time. But I am interested in what you think, because we've talked about this before on these next to last ones, where there's a lot of stuff. We've really read into it. We've got all the Easter eggs. But yet sometimes these series don't answer questions purposefully, like just to kind of put that out there. But what mysteries do you think, or things that they have dropped in this, will not be resolved or solved or mentioned again? Or, we talk about speculation, right? Dan Z talks about speculation all the time, where it's very dangerous to kind of like, oh, well, they've got to resolve this, and this, and they don't. They take a very linear line, and boom, it's done, and you're left going, but what about that thing? Are there some things that you think that you're kind of excited about, interested about, that won't have any more said about it or resolved, as it were?
What comes to mind immediately is the rest of the planets. Because we've got the one that's torn up by war at Akron, and we have at Aten. They name check some others, but whatever happens to this one, it would seem that the other planets, at least at one time, had these mints or some, equally valuable resource on them. And so I feel like that might be the dangling thread, right? Who has that information at the end and what's going on those? I could very easily see a final shot where we're on a totally different planet with its own vault and somebody else is there, or somebody else is, standing on the bridge of a ship looking at another similar toxic storm and saying, oh, if we could get inside there. So I think that comes to mind first. I think they're going to leave some version of the pirate crew out there because they're too much fun. And maybe it's Gunter, running the crew, or I still can't remember the guy from Mando, but he was in this one, Vane. Maybe it's Vane now because they're on the ship and Jod is on the planet. So what if they are the ones who start hunting down other planets or something like that? So those are my two best guesses. I think we're going to kind of feel like the kids and Atten get put more in a resting position, like their result.
Interesting.
That's my guess.
I think the two that come to mind for me would be Jod's backstory, which I think would be a delicious story or flashback. Will it have something to do, like with his closing, whether it's, in the series or just in the season, as far as like, will we find out what happened to him? Was he at the temple? Was he even was he a Jedi? Why did he all of a sudden be like this? And I think the other hat would probably be either what happened after the crash. Did Renard survive the crash? Did he survive it all? And is he still around? Will we hear anything more about his story, since they sprinkled it all throughout there? A smaller one would be, and we haven't even mentioned it because he's taken out, SM-33. I have a feeling that he will be repaired at some point. He might come into play, but I don't know too much more. What will too much more get from him? But I would say, to me, the big one is Jod's backstory and Captain Renard.
Both those stories would make fantastic comic books or novels, and that's often what they leave dangling, right? So it feels like that would be right. If we got the Kelnaka comic and we're getting the the books about the Acolyte characters, I feel like they're going to leave a little meat on the bone for the other branches to pick up on, and maybe those are it. So good guesses.
All right. Anything else left on your list before we get to the Pringles cans reviews?
I'm hungry for some Pringles, man. Let's do it.
Awesome. It's also interesting that I think I went past I was in a Jewel Osco, and I think I went specifically to the Pringles aisle. And by the way, I having not looked at a Pringles can aisle in a while, I'm like, there's a lot of flavors of Pringles. But what was it? Like 5 servings per can, and I think about 15.
All right.
It's 15 crisp or something like that. It was something like, it sounded like there was about like 75-ish or something like that. So, yeah. Right. I was sitting there doing quick math, but I would say like that's about right. But at any rate, somebody sent me a YouTube video that was like how many, this kid was like literally counting the number of Pringles in a can and then lost count at some point. It was amazing. But what Pringles can rating are you giving this one?
This was my favorite episode so far. So I'm going to go for a 9.5, which I think, again, is getting higher. I'm not going to the 10 cans of Bold Barbecue like Mr. Gross did last week. But I will say I'm inching up close to the 10, and I think I want to say that as we move into the finale, I'm very hopeful, but I'm also very confident. I think they've shown us that this is well constructed, and they had a clear idea and they let the creators cook. So I'm not even nervous going in the finale. I think, sometimes in a finale you're like, will they hit it and will it make the rest seem dumb? I'm looking at you, Ahsoka. Or will it really land? And I have no doubt that they're going to land this. So I can't wait to see it. And I hope it's really thrilling and got some good action in it. Where are you at for this week, though, since I rated this week and next week?
Well, and it's kind of like exactly what you said. I kind of started off with an 8. I liked the episode, but I am a little concerned with, I want it to stick the landing next week. I have confidence. It's been a great series. I think maybe it's because in some other shows where usually you get to the penultimate and then like the finale is sometimes an aftermath or what happens next or something like that. This was a great cliffhanger. And this is one of those I'm really happy where it wasn't like Netflix where they just kind of dump it all out and you're going, how long has this show been up? So I am concerned because, like I said, some of the other shows haven't quite hit the mark with some folks, and you're just like, this has been so much of a joy that I really want them to hit him. So I think it's more I'm just a little scared about it. I want it to hit the landing. I think they're going to be great. I'm a little bit nervous, but I do think it'll be all right. But yeah, I thought, it's not my favorite of, but boy was it good. So I'm gonna stick with 8, and I think I'm gonna stay right there.
Ooh, you're tough but fair. I respect it.
No, it was tough. It was tough. But anyway, all right. I thought this was going to be a really short show, but I'm kind of happy that we had a chance to let some of this breathe. I know next week we'll see if we can't pull back some guests on this, because I know that just like with this one, a lot of people are going to have a lot to say about the finale one way or the other, and it is kind of a shame. I think Mary was saying on the thread, it's like you almost kind of want this to go longer because like we just started the big winter. And you're like, it's going to be a long time before Andor, season 2.
April 22nd, I think. Yeah.
It's a lot of time
late
between
April.
now and then.
That's basically my whole semester between now. I start the semester the day after the Skeleton Crew finale, and I think I finish for the year on like the 28th or something of April. So it's pretty much my whole semester. But
oh man,
that's okay. Greg, we got Star Wars Unlimited right in the middle. We got Jump to Lightspeed, so don't worry.
That's true.
Did you see brief homestead keeping? They announced some fancy packs today. Did you see these?
I did not see those. Do tell.
Oh, high-end carbonite packs, which are all the foils and new variants and alt arts. I didn't see a price yet, so I want to ask some questions, but it looked like, a premium product for people who really want to collect the special variants for Star Wars Unlimited. Will Homestead keep sometime soon?
Well, no, and I was talking in Homestead Keeping on the main show about they had expanded on the pre-orders, right? Because we were on Flipside Gaming, and not only did they have the starter pack, the booster box, and the preview box, which I got for I haven't even opened that yet. But they had the deck, like you could get a dual deck, like a Han and Boba deck, but inside those they had a booster, like a 50 card deck plus the booster, plus a booster pack, and you could get, and 2 of them came, so about 34. It was about, all of them are about the same. And the other thing I've noticed is a lot of the other boxes have started to kind of come down. So I think the prices are stabilizing. So if it's a good time to get in because they reprinted a lot of Spark of the Rebellion. You still have. But along with Twilight, you have Shadows of the Galaxy. So, yeah, if you want to try to play this game, which is under a year old, if you can believe it still, the preview cards I am seeing for Jump to Lightspeed look great. I'm hoping when I get down to Steam and Star Wars this weekend that I'll get in on some of the Unlimited action. Otherwise, after this week, I am hoping to kind of get into some draft games. And then, yes, I think we're opening some product on a show one of these days.
Absolutely. It's all sitting down here ready to go. I could even do my Twilight of the Republic pre-release. I still have that as well. But yes, it's great. Great time to be a Star Wars fan.
Alrighty. And by the way, shout out to the Wampus Lair, because they posted something on TikTok where they were both talking into the Comtech reader as if it was a walkie-talkie, circa the Skeleton Crew. And I was like, I got one of those. Now can I play too? Can you call me? At any rate, I need to revive my TikTok.
Boy, their brand is playing Star Wars, and they do it so joyfully. It's a great time. So yeah.
But in the meantime, other than the fact that you will be on a long take review for the rest of the winter doing the Oscars stuff, where can people find you?
I'm online at Ion Canon on any social media I'm on. That's EYEONCANON. IonCanon.com. I just paid my renewal, so that's going another year. Should really start doing more on there. And then particularly of late, I'm doing a lot more on Letterboxd, which is becoming my favorite social media because you just get to log your favorite movies, and everybody should be on there. And every time you watch a movie, you just throw it in, throw your review on, and it's no politics, it's no racism, it's no junk from other social media. It's just everybody loving movies and showing what they're watching and making lists of their favorite and so on. So people should get on Letterboxd. I'm Ion Canon over there. Find me there, please. Find me there. I love it.
And yes, I although I think last week I was little tardy on my Fantha Tracks review for Skeleton Crew. I kind of found I was like, boy, it's harder when you really like the episode sometimes rather than when you have something like to say and you've got that nugget. I'm like, all right, but I did get it up in time and it's been really fun. So 2 more reviews I got to put up because I got to do this one and then next week. And hopefully I'll be back for Andor, although it's going to be 12 episodes. It's going to be putting it out there, but I'm excited and it's been real fun to get the writing back in there. But if you have a question for the Breakfast Pack, you can find me on the socials. Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and Hive at Rebel Base Card. Hey, we've hit the end of another one, and we're almost done with Skeleton Crew. I hope you guys out there have enjoyed it as much as Greg and I, because it's been a blast. Wouldn't you say, Greg? This has been a fun show.
Absolutely. Fun, no strings attached, no anxiety. It's just a good time every week. I'm sharing it with my son. He loves it. It's great Star Wars. Time to get Star Wars in the theater, but until then, I'm pretty happy.
Oh, yeah. My mom and I have been watching it as well. She loves Jude Law, and so she's just like, I got to wait till next week. I'm like, yes. So this has been a fun one to enjoy with the family. I know Tom even said that some of his family members as well. So this has been fun, Star Wars for the whole family. But as much as I'd love this to go on longer, this Love Fest, we actually have some real work to do, and I got Steam coming up this weekend. Going to be exciting. We're doing a show live on there. I'm hoping to do some Instagram live while I'm down there, so check us out there. But we'll be back after the next episode with even more questions, maybe, that we hope somebody else answers. So until then, for Greg and I, we now return you to your podcast playlist, already in progress.
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.